So today's video should be much shorter than normal. There's not really much else to talk about in terms of the market dynamics. There's nothing really that new, but we are killing it every day in live trading. We're very profitable. We're constantly posting winning trades. So if you want to trade alongside me live and you want to participate and you want to watch, you can join the Discord. You could be a part of our community where we share our thoughts and our trades every day. And also I live stream on Twitch, YouTube, and TikTok. So definitely join the Discord and be a part of the community. We're a group of like-minded individuals that are trying to become better as traders. So now, in terms of this video here, let's get started. I'm going to do this very quickly. Number one, straight off the bat, the IWM opened and closed outside of the upper level of the Bollinger Band again. We had a retest back down to 185. I was saying how 185 was on the table. It was almost obvious that we were going to retest 185. That's what happened. But we're still in the air on the IWM. We're still just trading in the clouds here. And we saw yesterday that the IWM can maintain opening and closing outside of the upper Bollinger Bands for at least 3 days. So we could end up, gapping up and opening green again tomorrow. But what we've seen time and time again, holding puts for 1-2 months out with some time has always been profitable, and it's always worked. Of course, it's not always a guarantee. Past history does not dictate future performance, of course, but statistically, there hasn't been a time in history where that hasn't been the case. Where on the IWM specifically, if it's trading this far out of the Bollinger Bands, we always come back and return back inside. And holding puts for 1 to 2 months out always works out because we end up falling lower. So with the IWM teetering and holding this level of support at 184.80 and 185, right? The SPY showed strength because the IWM was holding support, because the NASDAQ held support and bounced very emphatically today. The NASDAQ is up 1.2%. And because the NASDAQ is up, the SPY also ended up bouncing. So we're still basically teetering at this level of resistance at 429.16 area. If you watched the live stream a few days ago, 429.16 was a major area that I wanted to short at. And we're still trading below this 429.60 high. Technically, we're still trading below 430. So it's not a guarantee. Like, obviously, this is a bullish setup, right? Things are setting up for, even if we come back and retest 428 on the SPY, this should continue up. This is a really, really, really bullish setup. I'd be very surprised. This is a very big green candle on the SPY. I'd be very surprised if the SPY does not continue going up higher. And the level that would basically invalidate this move to the upside is going to be a break below 427. So if we end up breaking and closing below 427, then this move upwards is just a bull trap. So, and then the main level of resistance that we need to break above is 430. So those are the two levels of support and resistance on the SPY. The IWM is doing what it needs to. It's holding support, which it gave enough time for because you could see the IWM was only down 0.37% today. The IWM held support. The NASDAQ showed strength, and then the SPY, because the IWM was not breaking support, and because the NASDAQ was skyrocketing, it gave enough room for the SPY to also do well. All right. So, shorting into weakness, especially on a very, very strong stock here, is difficult because the NASDAQ, it fell straight to support. And the levels, this is obviously also a very bullish setup on the NASDAQ, but you can see that it didn't close above 354. So 354 is the immediate level of resistance on the NASDAQ currently. Above 354, then we need to get a close above this range high here, which is 357.50 or the 356 area. We need closes above that area for a continued move up, because the SPY and the NASDAQ, they both look bullish. All right. Saying that they don't is, obviously the NASDAQ doesn't look as bullish as the SPY, but those are the levels of resistance for the NASDAQ. If we reverse back down here and we get a close below 348.60, specifically if we get a close below 347, 346.50 area here, then this can really start to fall lower. But they're making this very, very bullish, and this might just remain up. The NASDAQ and the SPY might just remain up like this a bit longer, but these are the initial, those are the levels of resistance for the NASDAQ, and those are the levels of resistance for the SPY. And the longer it takes to break above those levels on the NASDAQ and the SPY, the more bearish it is. So be sure to keep your eye on those levels of resistance here. 354 and then 356, then 357.50 on the NASDAQ. That's basically it. Then we can quickly take a look at the VIX. We know that the VIX is also at levels prior to the COVID crash. So we're at January 2020 levels here on the VIX. So the VIX has a negative inverse relationship to the market. If the VIX is falling, that means that the market is very strong. And you can clearly see that we're not trading outside of the lower level of the Bollinger Band on the VIX, which means that there is more room to fall to the downside before we become very overextended to the downside. When the VIX becomes very overextended to the downside, that's when it's problematic to be, that's when it's problematic to be short on the VIX, and it's problematic to be long on the stock market. When this starts trading outside of the lower level of the, if say for example, tomorrow, right? One of these days, the VIX ends up very far outside of the Bollinger Band. A day like that, it is very, very difficult to be bullish. You should be very scared and cautious about being very, very bullish on the S&P 500 the days that the VIX does that. All right. So keep on watching the VIX. We're not overextended to the downside in terms of the Bollinger Band. And today, the large tech stocks had a huge bounce. Tesla did really, really well. Apple bounced off of this trend line perfectly, which is pretty insane. This trend line that's been tested like 7 times since January. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is the 7th time that it's basically bounced off of this trend line. And yeah, Apple is basically showing strength. Tesla is showing strength. The chips bounced. Nvidia, AMD, Microsoft, Google, they all did, relatively well. They bounced. Google had a big red day and then it showed support, right? But then Microsoft, similar to Google, it showed support, right? It didn't have a continued red day. But regardless, all of these things are showing bullish signs for the market. The VIX is still showing that there's more room to go to the downside. The SPY looks very, very bullish. I'm not going to lie. The NASDAQ also looks a bit more bullish. The IWM can still go a bit higher, but I'm more bearish on the IWM compared to the NASDAQ and the SPY because we are just trading very, very overextended to the upside. The easiest thing, if we end up getting another gap up tomorrow, if we get another gap up on the IWM tomorrow, then I would definitely be getting puts for basically like a month out. And then if the next day afterward we gap up again, which is the 4th day in a row, we've never seen the IWM gap up 4 days without really falling afterwards. So if we gap up tomorrow and then gap up again tomorrow, and both of those days afterward we end up trading outside of the upper level of the Bollinger Band, we're scaling it to puts. Okay, but regardless, intraday, we're killing it. This whole bullish move on the SPY, the NASDAQ, and everything like that, in swinging terms, I was not expecting it this much. But in terms of day trading, we're still killing it. So that's pretty hilarious in my opinion. But yeah, things are working out really well in terms of that department. And if you guys enjoy the content, if you guys like the video, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe. there's not really much else to talk about. We can take a look at the dollar, and the dollar, you can see, so the dollar has an inverse relationship to the market as well. And the dollar clearly is showing a lot of weakness. And we know that if the dollar is showing weakness like this, then that means that it's bullish for the stock market. So I've been showing how the dollar was very, very weak. All of these wicks over here were not bullish for the dollar. And basically we had a big red day on the dollar, and the dollar, this weakness out of the dollar helped propel the equities market up. So yeah, I mean, this is not a bullish setup on the dollar. This should continue falling lower. And the SPY was a bullish setup. It should continue higher. So I mean, yeah, we just have to continue watching to see how things play out. But aside from that, yeah, man, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. And yeah, thank you guys for your support. I'll see you guys bright and early tomorrow morning. Thank you.